America's obviously polarized. It feels like Wisconsin is patient zero. Do you accept that?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty wild out there. I mean there's just so much anger, so much hatred, and I take it back, Chuck, to the fact that computers have become so successful to determine how a person is going to vote on a particular block or street, and reapportionment has allowed the computer system and the partisans to pick and choose so that a Republican district will remain Republican and a Democrat district will remain Democrat.
You get to pick your voters.
You pick your voters, and therefore, Jim and I, are friends.
Yeah.
But I would never, if in modern day politics, I would not want to debate him. I wouldn't even want to talk to him.
Right.
Because I'm afraid somebody from my right would run against me. Jim would feel the same way. Somebody from the George Soros left would come against him.
Right.
So we have become paralyzed because we have redistricted to such an extent that a Republican state is going to be a Republican state, a Democrat, except on a statewide ballot. But individual districts, and that has become the partisan parochialism that it is today.
Sir, would you disagree with anything he just said there?
No, I agree, but I would add this. One of the reasons Wisconsin is so much the center of this now is you look at the demographics of the state and the big divisions that have happened in the country, rural and small town against cities, big expanding economies like Madison against rural economies that are struggling. Those have happened all over. It's just in Wisconsin, when you add those up, it's a 50-50 state. So, I was the Attorney General when Governor Thompson was governor, and we certainly had our fights. But there were times that he would win 60% of the vote at the top of the ballot, right, and then the next line down would be me, and I'd win 60% of the vote. That is never going to happen.
59%. You've never gotten 60.
I got 60 in that.
It's now, there are no swing voters. It's two states in one. That's what Dan Balls called it. It's really two states, right? It
has become so partisan and so divided that I would have to say it's almost two states. But I would say it's urban areas. It's Dane County and Milwaukee County, where the vast majority of the Democrat votes come from, versus rural Wisconsin. And rural Wisconsin, when Jim and I were running, used to be a lot of counties up north were very strong blue counties. They have switched over to being red. The red counties become more red. The blue counties have become a lot more blue.
So how do you de-escalate? How would you de-escalate? I'll start with you, Governor Doyle.
Well, we really do need to have nonpartisan redistricting, no question about it. And both sides, in my final 2 years as governor, after 8 years, I finally had a Democratic legislature. We had started all Republican, built up, had a Democratic legislature. I went to them in 2008 and said, let's create a nonpartisan reapportionment commission, like some states were doing. Iowa did it, Arizona done it. And I went around the state, talked to the editorial boards, not a whole lot of interest. They kind of liked it. Democrats said 2008, at least the leadership, no, we don't have the votes. Plus, we're in the majority now. I said, you're in the majority by 2 votes. Don't count on, we're in the majority now. They thought they were going to be in the majority forever. 2010 comes along, the wave hits, and there they are. So but I really do think you have to do that. I also think, I don't know, I wish I had the answer to this. You have to put some ethics back into government. You can hit somebody hard, but you can't just lie about it. And, we would fact check every ad I ever read 100 times. We were so worried we'd get caught on something.
There's no penalty. There's no penalty. The incentive structure, there's no penalty for lying about something.
Well, that's the problem. Leadership, ethics. I'm not so sure reapportionment would change that much. It might, but the truth of the matter is, when you become so partisan and have so many people that you know exactly that the Republicans are going to win, why do you want to reach over and be bipartisan? And that's the problem all over. It's now permeated down into the school boards, and to the counties, the cities, the village, and the legislatures and Congress.
So everywhere else around the country, the first person to be blamed would be Trump. Where does the blame lie here? I'll start
lack of leadership. I really think, and I'm just not saying it's the Democrats don't have leaders. I mean, Republicans and Democrats have got to come forth and say, you know, this just is not working. Ads, you got to have some sort of accuracy in an ad. You just can't just go out and lie about somebody.
In the digital world, you can. Yeah.
And that's what happened. And the leadership of both political parties got to come together and say, let's set up some ethics.
Where do you lie it? Where do you put it?
There's no doubt Trump is a huge factor. Whether he started it, there's a debate that's certainly understandable. He exploited it. There were divisions that he drove those divisions so deep. I've said to Tommy before, you know, if you had told him when he was governor that some group of people wasn't voting for him, his first instinct wasn't going to be to go and call those people names. His instinct would have been, I'm going to go over there and try to get them to love me. Now, some of them would and some of them wouldn't, but that's what his instinct would have been.
Right. I want to throw this by you, and I want both of you to respond to this. But I personally had a theory that one of the reasons why Wisconsin, there's never a moment of de-escalation, is that even after the elections are too close. So if you lose by less than a percentage point, you don't go back and think, maybe my message was wrong. You think, I just registered a couple more voters. So that there's no recalibration. You don't believe the voters rejected your ideas. You just believe the other side out-organized you or outspent you. This next time I'll do it. And so you're just grinding in and grinding in. What do you think?
I think that's true.
Yeah.
But it goes back even before pre-Trump. It goes back even to George W. Bush. George W. Bush lost the state of Wisconsin to Al Gore by 5,700 votes. And if we remember back then, it was whether or not Al Gore was going to be president or George W. Bush. Ever since that George W. Bush, we've been so close. And President,
it's almost like you're too close, and it's made everybody dig in.
And it's human nature. Don't blame me. Blame that other guy, Chuck. You know, I couldn't have been wrong. And when you only have 20 or 30,000 votes, and you've got over 2 million votes, you know, it's easy to point your finger. I think it's wrong. I think elections are fair, and I think Wisconsin is a fair state. But the truth of the matter is we have to be able to disengage this partisan rhetoric.
All right. The future of this democracy, are you optimistic or pessimistic?
I'm always optimistic.
Most former electeds are. Why are you optimistic?
Because we're Americans. We overcame the Civil War. We overcame a lot of racial disharmony, and we had 2 world wars. I think we can still save and salvage our democracy. I'm very optimistic we will.
It's one way to be optimistic when you bring up all of our bleak, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. What about you, Governor?
Well, I'm optimistic only because if you don't have a democracy, what do you have? And that's pretty simple. But I will say this. I once asked that same question of a number of people, in 3 or 4 my friends who are in your business who have been covering Washington forever. And this was even before Trump. But when in 2014, 2015, and they said they've never seen the country so divided. One of them since died hasn't even been able to see it today. When I asked them what would it take, and this is the scary thing to me, they said they thought it was going to take some cataclysmic event.
I think so too.
Now, you would have hoped COVID would have been the cataclysmic event where we all had to pull together, we all had to, and in fact, because of how polarized we were going in, we ended up more polarized coming out. I hope that isn't true. I hope it isn't true. And this is the scary thing to me about all of these recounts and all of the stuff with what Trump's doing. It's such an attack. There were real courageous people. Richard Nixon knew that there may have been some votes in Illinois that hadn't gone his way, but for the good of the country, it's pretty historically documented. He said, I'm stepping back. Al Gore, after they had fought out Florida, said, that's it, and he did it. I defeated 3 incumbents for the jobs that I had. All people who loved the job. I've had 3 jobs, a district attorney, attorney general, a governor. I defeated an incumbent every time. They all loved the job they had. Every single one of those men who were good men and who had lost something that they wanted so badly called me up that day, that night, and congratulated me and said that they would help.
9/11, I was Secretary of Health and Human Services. I went to New York. I was the first secretary before even George W. Bush went to New York. I came back that night, and on the square around the Capitol, Democrats and Republicans were crying, embracing, singing, holding hands. And I walked in the next day with President George W. Bush to the chambers. Everybody stood up. Everybody applauded. There was such a feeling of togetherness. We are Americans. We're not Republicans and Democrats now. We are Americans, and that has got to come through loud and clear. I agree with Jim. We got to be able to come and say, you know, this democracy is worth saving, and we got to forget about our petty differences and look at the big picture.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.